Today is July 25th. This is another installment of our series of interviews with legislators regarding the governor's called special session. Today's guest is Speaker Cameron Sexton. What are your thoughts regarding the need for the special session that Governor Lee has demanded?
Well, I think there's certain things that we can accomplish. I think there's certain things that we're probably not going to do. But, if you're looking at things that are possible, there's a report that came out that, the background checks for felons and people who have been mentally health committed is not an instantaneous background checks. We have a lot of data that's not in the system. Some of it's 12 years old and it's still not in the system. I think one of the keys that we can do is make sure that if we do have those background checks, that information gets into our system immediately, so that if you're in court and you're not supposed to be able to purchase a gun, then the data should reflect it. I think if we can solve that as one thing, that would be a huge success for us.
At this time, what are your thoughts regarding the red flag law or extreme risk protection order that Governor Lee is seeking to allow government to seize guns from individuals who presently can legally own and possess them?
I don't foresee that happening, red flag laws in our state. I don't see that coming out of committee. I think what we have seen as we've gone through and looked at the issues that we have when we talk to law enforcement or mental health people is a couple things. One is we have an emergency and voluntary commitment law that you have to be an immediate threat to yourself, which means suicidal. And that's why that statute's used the vast majority of time for people who are wanting to commit suicide. But it also talks about general mass threat. Well, most mass threats are not immediate. They are imminent because they don't detail what they're going to do, but they do talk about mass threats. And so is there a possibility to work on that language to allow people who are wanting to do harm to society as a whole to have the possibility to have a court to see if they need to be committed, emergency and voluntary? And then the other part, the before part of that is on state law. If I make a specific threat against someone, that is a crime. Law enforcement can investigate, they can arrest, they can subpoena me, they can put me on mental health assessments. But if I make a general mass threat to society again or to an area, that is not a crime. And so there's conversations about, should that be a crime? Should law enforcement be able to look into it and also put you under mental health assessment? I would opine that if I make a threat against you as an individual, I should be looked at. If I make a general threat against society as a whole or as an area, I think that the law enforcement should have the tools to see if I am a threat to society and if I'm going to carry through with that. So I think there's a couple of things there that we can do outside the red flag laws. I don't think we will.
That being said, what alternatives to a red flag or ERPO law do you think should be considered by the General Assembly?
Well, one is, I think, looking to see if we need to have a mass threat against society as a potential crime to give law enforcement tools, or give law enforcement the tools if someone is saying that they're going to do harm to a certain area or a town or make a statement. Law enforcement should have the tools to investigate it. Right now, they don't. The second part, as I said earlier, the emergency and voluntary commitment is only if you're an immediate threat to yourself or immediate threat to society. Mass shooters are usually not an immediate threat until the day they're doing it. And usually no one sees it. They all see the statements that they make leading up to it. And like in retrospect, you're like, oh, well, that's what this was. And so looking at the emergency and voluntary commitment statute, and trying to change that a little bit to imminent threat potentially if you have someone who's willing to do harm to society.
Do you have any other thoughts about these issues that I have not brought up in the previous questions?
Well, I think, we're sitting here looking at a lot of different ideas. School safety is still on the table, some other additional things in the criminal code to crack down on felons. I think also mental health, bringing mental health parity with reimbursement to substance abuse treatment. I think adding more long-term mental health beds in our state that are state run. We only have 577 state inpatient long-term beds. In the 90s, that's a 90% decrease from the 1990s. And so I think we need to look at adding more beds, more capacity in our state. You talk to law enforcement, you talk to hospitals, you talk to the mental health communities. They say there's just not enough bed capacity. And so we need to increase that as well. And so the last thing I'll talk about is there's a lot of crime going on with juveniles in our state. And so we need to look at toughening juvenile laws, and we also need to look at blended sentences for juvenile. But also juveniles, when they turn 19, if they haven't been charged as an adult, their records are expunged. And so should a juvenile who has been done violent crimes like carjacking, should their records be expunged at age 19, or should it be a little bit later? I think those are all things that we want to talk about and have conversations as if those are the things that we may want to do now or maybe later.
Speaker Sexton, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to come and visit with the membership of the TFA. At the end of the special session, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to get back together and talk about what occurred.
Thank you.
If you learned something today that was beneficial, hit the like and subscribe button. It helps to get our message out and sell the brand. Check back for more content as often as you can. You can find our website at www.tennesseefirearms.com. If you are new there, click the subscribe button on that page as well to receive free email updates about issues that affect your Second Amendment rights in Tennessee.